My husband of 8 years announced at our anniversary dinner, "I'm leaving you for my 22-year-old secretary, you're too boring in bed." Everyone at the table gasped. I simply smiled and finished my wine. 3 days later, my phone exploded with 47 missed calls and his mother begging me to answer. I had spent weeks planning our anniversary dinner. 8 years of marriage deserved a celebration, even if things between James and I had been tense lately. I reserved a private room at Le Blanc, the upscale restaurant where he had proposed to me. I invited our closest friends, 6 couples who had been with us through thick and thin. I wore the emerald dress he once said made my eyes sparkle. The evening started perfectly. Champagne flowed, conversation sparkled, and for a moment, I thought maybe I had been overthinking the distance growing between us. James seemed attentive, even placing his hand on mine during the appetizer course. When dessert arrived, a custom cake I had ordered with "Happy 8th Anniversary" written in his favorite chocolate ganache, I raised my glass for a toast. That's when James cleared his throat and stood up. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice unexpectedly cold. Everyone smiled, probably expecting some romantic declaration. I remember feeling a fleeting moment of hope. "I'm leaving Kelly," he continued, not even looking at me. "I've been seeing Amber, my secretary, for the past 4 months. She's 22, gorgeous, and frankly," he finally turned to me with a smirk, "she's not boring in bed like my wife." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes darting between us. Melissa, my best friend, gasped audibly. Brian, James's business partner, awkwardly dropped his fork. Our friends froze, champagne glasses suspended midair. In that moment, something strange happened inside me. Instead of the tears or screaming that James clearly expected, perhaps even hoped for, I felt an odd clarity wash over me. 8 years of doubting myself, of trying to be the perfect wife, of ignoring the signs, it all crystallized into perfect understanding. I simply smiled, picked up my wine glass, and finished the remaining Cabernet in one elegant sip. "Is that all?" I asked calmly, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten cake. James looked confused, then irritated by my lack of reaction. He had staged this public humiliation expecting tears, perhaps begging. My composure threw him off balance. "Did you hear what I said?" he demanded, his voice rising. "I'm leaving you. Tonight. I've already packed my things." I nodded, maintaining eye contact. "I heard you. I hope you've packed thoroughly. It would be inconvenient to come back for anything." His face flushed with anger. This wasn't the drama he had anticipated. Our friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats as I signaled the waiter. "Could we have the check, please?" I asked pleasantly. "And perhaps some boxes for the cake? It seems we have something to commemorate after all." As we left the restaurant, James stormed ahead to his car, while our friends surrounded me with whispered concerns and offers of support. "Are you okay?" Melissa asked, clutching my arm. "What can I do?" "I'm perfectly fine," I assured her. Some marriages end with a whimper, mine ended with a declaration. At least it's clear. What I didn't tell her, what I didn't tell anyone, was what I had discovered 2 weeks earlier while organizing our tax documents, or the quiet meetings I'd had with our attorney after finding evidence of James's creative accounting at his investment firm, or the careful steps I had taken to protect myself once I realized our marriage was likely over. I drove home alone that night, to the sprawling Tudor home we had purchased 3 years ago. James had insisted on the prestigious address, even though it stretched our finances. "Image is everything in my business," he'd explained while signing the mortgage papers. The house felt eerily quiet as I slipped off my heels and poured myself another glass of wine. I walked through each room, noting James's absent belongings. He had indeed packed thoroughly, his clothes, his watches, his golf trophies. But he'd left behind so much more than he realized. For the next 2 days, I went about my business with surprising tranquility. I contacted our attorney, changed the locks, and visited the bank. I canceled our joint credit cards and transferred my personal items to a safe deposit box. I spoke with my parents briefly, telling them only that James and I had separated. I took long baths, ordered takeout, and slept better than I had in months. On the 3rd morning, as I was enjoying coffee on the patio, my phone began buzzing incessantly. Notification after notification appeared, missed calls, voicemails, text messages. Most were from James, some from his mother Patricia, and others from numbers I didn't recognize. The most recent text from James read, "What the hell did you do? Call me now." Patricia's voicemail was tearful, "Kelly, dear, please call us back. There must be some misunderstanding. James is beside himself. Whatever he's done, surely we can work this out as a family." As my phone continued to light up with incoming calls, I calmly finished my coffee. The SEC doesn't issue warnings before they freeze accounts and seize documents. And wives who discover their husbands are running Ponzi schemes aren't obligated to warn them before providing evidence to federal investigators. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the 47 missed calls. The last one was from James's attorney, a man who had once patted my hand at a Christmas party and told me how lucky I was to have such a financial genius for a husband. I let it ring through to voicemail. After all, I had my own attorney now. And unlike James, I wasn't boring at all, I was just patient. I finally answered on the 48th call. Not James's, and certainly not his mother's, but my best friend Melissa's. "Kelly, have you seen the news?" Her voice was breathless. "I've been enjoying a quiet morning," I replied, setting my empty coffee cup in the sink. "Turn on Channel 7. Now." The urgency in her voice made me pause. I walked to the living room and switched on the television. There it was, James's investment firm, Hartley Financial Partners, splashed across the screen with the headline, "Federal Agents Raid Prestigious Investment Firm Amid Fraud Allegations." The camera showed FBI agents carrying boxes of documents from the gleaming downtown office building where James had built his empire. The reporter's voice provided a dramatic narration. Sources say authorities are investigating what may be a Ponzi scheme affecting hundreds of clients, with estimated losses exceeding $50 million. I sat down slowly on the edge of the sofa, watching as they cut to footage of James being escorted to a black SUV, his face partially hidden behind his raised arm. Even in crisis, he was wearing his favorite Armani suit. "Kelly, are you there?" Melissa's voice pulled me back to our call. "Yes, I'm watching. Did you know about any of this?" Her question was careful, tentative. I thought about our friendship of 15 years, how she'd been my maid of honor, how she'd supported me through my father's death and 2 miscarriages. She deserved honesty. "I suspected financial irregularities," I said evenly. "I found evidence while preparing our tax documents." "And you didn't tell me?" There was no accusation in her voice, just surprise. "I couldn't. Once I understood what I was looking at, I went directly to the authorities. They asked for my complete silence." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Melissa whispered, "No wonder you were so calm at dinner. When he humiliated you, you already knew that he was about to lose everything?" "Yes." The timing of his announcement was, ironically, convenient. After promising to come over later, Melissa hung up. I remained on the sofa, watching the news coverage cycle through the same footage. They interviewed former employees who claimed shock and dismay. They showed James's clients, doctors, retired teachers, small business owners standing outside the office building, faces stricken with the realization that their life savings might be gone. My phone continued to explode with notifications. James's mother called 3 more times, his lawyer twice, several of our friends who had been at the dinner 3 nights ago. I silenced it all. At noon, a knock at the door broke my trance. I approached cautiously and checked the peephole. It was Patricia, James's mother, her normally perfectly coiffed hair disheveled, her eyes red from crying. I hesitated before opening the door, but some residual sense of politeness prevailed. "Kelly," she said, her voice breaking, "please help us." I stood in the doorway, neither inviting her in nor sending her away. The woman who had once told James he had married down now looked desperate for my assistance. "Patricia, I don't think there's anything I can do. But you must know something. The authorities, they're saying such terrible things about James. About money laundering, about fake investment returns." She wrung her hands. "They've frozen all his accounts. They've even taken our accounts because he added himself as a cosigner when Harold got sick." I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. James's father Harold had been battling Parkinson's for years. Unlike his son, Harold had been a kind, honest businessman. "Come in," I said finally, stepping aside. Patricia perched on the edge of the armchair, looking around as if seeing the house for the first time. "James said you wouldn't help him, that you weren't answering his calls. Did he mention that 3 nights ago, he publicly announced he was leaving me for his 22-year-old secretary? That he humiliated me in front of our friends?" Her face flushed. "He told me you'd had a disagreement, that you were being unreasonable." I laughed softly, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "A disagreement. That's an interesting way to describe it. Kelly, whatever happened between you two, this is serious. The FBI is saying James might go to prison. For years." Her voice cracked. "He needs the money in your joint accounts for his legal defense. He says you've locked him out." "There are no joint accounts anymore, Patricia. I separated our finances when I found evidence of what he was doing." Her expression shifted from pleading to shock. "You knew?" You knew about his business problems and you didn't help him? Business problems? I leaned forward. Your son was stealing from people. People like your friend Ruth, who invested her late husband's life insurance with James. Like the Wilsons, who trusted him with their retirement funds. Patricia's face paled. But he said it was just a temporary cash flow issue. I stood and walked to my home office, returning with a folder. I removed several documents and spread them on the coffee table. These are statements James created for clients, showing incredible returns. I pointed to the professionally designed letterhead, the impressive graphs. And these, I continued, placing another set of papers beside them, are the actual trading records. There were no investments, Patricia. The money from new clients was being used to pay returns to older clients, while James siphoned off millions for himself. She stared at the papers, her hands trembling. How did you get these? I handled our household finances. James was careless. He used our home printer for some of these documents. When I noticed discrepancies, I started looking deeper. 2 weeks ago, I found these in his home office safe. And you went to the authorities? Her voice was barely audible. Yes. After I consulted with an attorney who specializes in financial fraud. I was told I could potentially be implicated if I didn't report what I knew. Patricia covered her face with her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were filled with tears, but her expression had hardened. You betrayed your husband. I didn't flinch. Your son betrayed everyone who trusted him, including me. He loved you. He loved what I represented. The supportive wife, the perfect hostess for his client dinners, the woman who never questioned his late nights or suspicious phone calls. I gathered the documents and returned them to the folder. I think you should go now. Patricia stood shakily. This isn't over, Kelly. The family will fight for James. We'll hire the best lawyers. With what money, Patricia? The cars, the vacation homes, the art collection, it was all purchased with stolen funds. The government will seize everything. As I showed her to the door, she turned, her face a mask of desperation and anger. What about loyalty? Don't you remember your wedding vows? For better or worse, I thought about the night James had announced he was leaving me, how he'd mocked me in front of our friends, how easily he'd discarded 8 years of marriage. James broke those vows long before I went to the authorities. And unlike your son, I didn't steal anyone's life savings. I just refused to be complicit any longer. After Patricia left, I leaned against the closed door, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. There was no satisfaction in seeing James's downfall, no joy in the pain his actions had caused so many innocent people. But there was something else, a sense of having finally stood up for myself, of having chosen truth over comfort. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I recognized, Special Agent Diana Martinez from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Mrs. Hartley, she said when I answered, we need to ask you a few more questions. Would tomorrow morning work for you to come to our office? Of course, I replied. And it's Ms. Wilson now. I've filed to return to my maiden name. As I hung up, I caught a glimpse of myself in the entryway mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, stronger, clearer, more defined. For 8 years, I had been Mrs. James Hartley, the perfect accessory to a successful man. Now I was becoming someone else entirely. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to finding out exactly who that might be. The media frenzy surrounding James's arrest intensified over the next 2 weeks. Each day brought new revelations about the scope of his fraud, the lavish lifestyle he'd maintained with stolen funds, and the growing list of victims. What began as a local scandal quickly gained national attention when several celebrities and a former senator were identified among those defrauded. I attended my FBI interview with Agent Martinez, bringing additional documents I'd discovered hidden in our home. The questions were thorough but fair. They wanted to understand when I had first suspected James's illegal activities, what evidence I had gathered, and whether I had benefited from the fraud. Mrs. Hart, excuse me, Ms. Wilson, Agent Martinez said, closing her notebook after 2 hours of questioning. Your cooperation has been invaluable. Will I need to testify? I asked, my stomach tightening at the thought of facing James in court. Most likely, yes, but that could be months away. These cases take time to build. She paused, studying me with professional curiosity. May I ask you something unofficial? I nodded. You were married to him for 8 years. How did you miss the signs for so long? The question wasn't accusatory, but it still stung. I'd asked myself the same thing countless times. I trusted him, I said simply. And James was very good at compartmentalizing his life. He kept his business separate from our marriage. Whenever I asked questions, he'd say I wouldn't understand the complexity of finance, that I should focus on what I was good at, which was making our home look perfect. planning dinner parties for his clients, being the supportive wife. I smiled ruefully. Looking back, it was all part of his image. The successful businessman with the picture-perfect life. Agent Martinez nodded thoughtfully. Well, your actions now have likely saved many future victims. As I left the federal building, I noticed a familiar car parked across the street, Amber's bright red BMW convertible, a bonus James had given her 3 months ago. She was sitting behind the wheel, large sunglasses hiding much of her face. When she saw me, she stepped out of the car. "Kelly," she called, hurrying across the street. Her designer outfit, likely another gift from James, contrasted sharply with her distressed expression. I stopped, curious despite myself. "Is it true?" she demanded, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Did you really turn James in?" "Hello, Amber. I provided information to the authorities, yes." She let out a bitter laugh. "Do you know what you've done? They froze all his accounts. They took my car this morning. They're saying the apartment he got me was purchased with stolen money." "It probably was," I replied evenly, her face contorted with anger and desperation. "He told me you were jealous and vindictive, but this is beyond." "Amber," I interrupted, suddenly feeling very tired. "James stole over $50 million from hundreds of people. Retirees, small business owners, families saving for their children's education. He's not the victim here." "But he loved me," she insisted, her voice breaking. "He was going to marry me after divorcing you." I studied her young face, recognizing the same blind trust one once had. "Did he tell you about his previous secretary, Sophia, or Daniela before her?" "James has a pattern, Amber. You're not the first, and you wouldn't have been the last." Her expression faltered. "What are you talking about?" "Ask him about the settlement he paid Sophia when she threatened a sexual harassment lawsuit. It's why she suddenly moved to California 2 years ago." Amber's face paled. "You're lying." "I have no reason to lie to you." I glanced at my watch. "I need to go. But a word of advice, get a good lawyer. The authorities will have questions about your involvement and any assets he gave you." As I walked away, she called after me. "He said you were boring, that you didn't understand him." I turned back. And yet here I am, free to walk away, while he's facing 20 years in federal prison. Maybe boring isn't so bad after all. That evening, Melissa came over with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of wine. We sat on my patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. "The news said they've identified over 300 victims so far," she said, refilling our glasses. "Some people lost everything." I nodded, feeling the familiar weight of secondhand guilt. "I keep thinking about them. The retirement funds, college savings, inheritances, all gone." "That's not on you, Kelly. You didn't know, but I should have." I set my glass down. There were signs. The sudden influx of wealthy clients, the rapid expansion of his firm, the increasingly extravagant purchases. I gestured around at our luxury home. "No legitimate financial advisor makes this kind of money this quickly. You trusted your husband. That's not a crime." Melissa reached over to squeeze my hand. "And you did the right thing as soon as you discovered the truth." We ate in companionable silence for a while, until Melissa asked the question everyone seemed curious about. "What will you do now? Will you sell the house?" I looked around at the sprawling property. "I have to. The FBI says it was purchased with commingled funds, so a portion of the sale will go toward victim restitution. But they've determined I had no knowledge of the fraud when we bought it, so I'll receive some of the proceeds." "And then what?" "I'm not sure yet." For the first time in weeks, I felt a genuine smile form. But isn't that exciting? 8 years of my life were dictated by James's wants and needs. Now I get to decide what comes next. The following morning, my attorney called with unexpected news. "James wanted to see me." "Absolutely not," was my immediate response. "I understand your reluctance," Mr. Garrett said carefully, "but he's been quite insistent. He claims to have information that would be of great interest to you." "Is this some kind of trap? A way to claim I was involved?" "That would be difficult given the evidence showing you were the one who reported him, but I would advise against meeting him alone. I'd need to be present, and the meeting would take place at the detention center with proper supervision." I considered this, my curiosity battling with my instinct to cut all ties. What kind of information could he possibly have that would interest me? He wouldn't specify. But given your financial situation and the ongoing investigation, it might be worth hearing him out. After much deliberation, I agreed to a meeting the following day. That night, I barely slept, my mind cycling through all the possible scenarios, all the painful things James might say, all the accusations he might hurl. The detention center was cold and sterile, nothing like the sleek, modern spaces James had always preferred. I sat beside my attorney in a small meeting room, steeling myself as the door opened and 2 guards escorted James in. His transformation shocked me. Just 3 weeks ago, he had been the picture of success in his tailored suit. Now, dressed in a standard-issue jumpsuit, his hair unkempt and his face unshaven, he looked diminished. The confident smirk that had been his default expression was gone, replaced by dark circles under hollow eyes. "Kelly," he said as he sat across from us, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak yet. "I'll get straight to the point," he continued, glancing nervously at the guard by the door. "I know things look bad. The evidence against me is substantial." "It's overwhelming," my attorney corrected. "The prosecution has built a solid case, Mr. Hartley. Your own records provide most of the damning evidence." James's jaw tightened. "Yes, well, that's why I wanted to speak with Kelly. There's something she should know." I finally found my voice. "What could you possibly tell me that would matter now, James?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Not all the money is gone. I have insurance. Accounts that the authorities don't know about. Offshore. Untraceable." My attorney shifted uncomfortably beside me, but I held James's gaze. "And you're telling me this because I want to make a deal." His eyes darted around the room before returning to mine. "I can give you access to some of those funds, enough to rebuild your life away from all this. All I ask is that you speak positively of me at my sentencing hearing. Tell them I was a good husband, that I've shown remorse." The audacity of his offer left me momentarily speechless. After everything he'd done, the theft, the lies, the betrayal, the public humiliation, he still believed I could be bought. "Let me understand," I said slowly. "You want me to lie to a federal judge about your character so you can get a lighter sentence. And in exchange, you'll give me money that you stole from innocent people." "It's more complicated than that," he insisted, frustration creeping into his voice. "Kelly, be reasonable. That money is just sitting there. No one will ever find it. At least this way, some good can come from it." For a brief moment, I saw James clearly, perhaps more clearly than I ever had during our marriage. The man before me wasn't evil in the dramatic sense. He was something more mundane but equally destructive, a person who had never developed a moral compass, who saw everything and everyone as tools to be used for his benefit. "No," I said firmly. "No." He looked genuinely surprised. "Don't be stupid, Kelly. This could be millions we're talking about. I'm not interested in stolen money. And I'm certainly not interested in helping reduce your sentence." His face darkened. "After 8 years of marriage, you owe me some loyalty. I owed you honesty and fidelity, which I provided. You owed me the same, which you did not." I stood up. "I have nothing more to say to you, James." As I turned to leave, his composure finally broke. "You'll regret this," he called after me, his voice rising. "When this is all over and you're struggling to pay rent in some shabby apartment, you'll remember this moment." I paused at the door and looked back at him. "No, James. I'll remember the moment at our anniversary dinner when you showed me exactly who you are. Everything since then has just confirmed it." As the heavy door closed behind me, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For years, I had measured my worth against James's approval. Now, walking away from his manipulation one final time, I realized how much energy I'd wasted seeking validation from someone incapable of seeing beyond his own desires. Outside the detention center, the spring sun felt warm on my face. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "How did it go? Are you okay?" I texted back, "Better than okay. I'm free." And for the first time since that devastating anniversary dinner, I truly believed it. 6 months passed in a blur of depositions, legal meetings, and difficult decisions. The federal case against James moved forward with methodical precision. His initial bravado crumbled when his attorney explained the mountain of evidence against him. Facing the possibility of spending decades in prison, James eventually agreed to a plea deal, 15 years with no possibility of parole before 10, and cooperation in recovering assets for his victims. The morning of his sentencing hearing, I stood in front of my closet, deliberating over what to wear. It felt strangely like preparing for a funeral, the official end of one chapter of my life. I finally settled on a simple navy dress. Professional, dignified, nothing that would draw attention or photographs from the press that had been following the case. The courtroom was packed with James's victims, elderly couples who had invested their retirement savings, parents who had entrusted college funds for their children, small business owners who had believed in James's promise of secure growth. Their faces told stories of shattered dreams and uncertain futures. I sat in the back row, wanting to observe without being observed. But whispers followed me nonetheless. That's her, the wife. She's the one who turned him in. I heard she didn't know anything until right before. James entered wearing an expensive suit, his last hurrah before prison-issued clothing. He looked composed but exhausted. When he scanned the courtroom and spotted me, his eyes lingered for a moment before his attorney redirected his attention. The proceedings were sobering. The prosecutor detailed the extent of James's crimes, over 400 victims, losses exceeding $65 million, systematic deception spanning nearly a decade. Several victims gave impact statements, their voices breaking as they described how James had gained their trust only to destroy their financial security. When it was James's turn to speak, he read a carefully crafted statement expressing remorse and accepting responsibility. The words were right, but the delivery felt hollow. I wondered if anyone else could tell he was performing, playing the role of the repentant fraudster as his final con. The judge was unmoved. "Mr. Hartley, you have committed crimes that devastated hundreds of lives. Your victims trusted you with their futures, and you betrayed that trust for your own greed." She sentenced him to the full 15 years agreed upon in the plea deal, plus restitution to his victims. As he was led away, James turned once more in my direction. I couldn't read his expression, regret, anger, resignation, whatever it was, I realized it no longer mattered to me. The man being escorted in handcuffs was essentially a stranger. Outside the courthouse, I was surprised to find several victims waiting for me. An elderly woman approached first, her back slightly bent but her eyes clear and direct. "Mrs. Hartley, I'm Margaret Wilson. My husband and I invested our entire retirement with your husband." I swallowed hard. "I'm so sorry for what happened to you. And it's Ms. Wilson now. I've gone back to my maiden name." She nodded. "I wanted to thank you. The FBI agent told us you were the one who provided the evidence that broke the case. That couldn't have been easy." "No," I admitted, "but it was necessary." A middle-aged man stepped forward. "My daughter's college fund was wiped out. We're starting over at 52. His voice was tight with emotion. "But at least he's being punished. At least there's some justice." One by one, they shared their stories with me. Their losses, their struggles, their slow process of rebuilding. I listened, accepting their pain without deflecting it, understanding that, for many of them, I represented both their betrayal and their vindication. Before leaving, Margaret pressed something into my hand, a small, smooth stone with the word courage etched into it. "I carry these for difficult days," she explained. "Thought you might need one too." That evening, I sat on the floor of my nearly empty living room, surrounded by boxes. The Tudor house had sold quickly once I reduced the price to ensure a fast sale. After the government took their portion for victim restitution, I was left with enough to make a fresh start, but nowhere near the wealth I had once taken for granted. My phone rang, Melissa checking in. "How did it go today?" "It was intense," I replied, "but also final. Like closing a book." "How are you feeling about the move tomorrow?" I looked around at the bare walls, the empty spaces where James's expensive art had once hung. "Ready. More than ready. The apartment is perfect, Kelly. You're going to love the neighborhood. And it's only 15 minutes from my place." After we hung up, I wandered through the house one last time. In the master bedroom, I opened the walk-in closet that had once been filled with designer clothes, most now sold to add to the restitution fund. My fingers traced the built-in shelving James had insisted on for his collection of watches. On a whim, I pressed the hidden latch behind the highest shelf, a feature James had proudly shown me when we first moved in. To my surprise, the small concealed compartment clicked open. Inside was a black velvet pouch. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet I'd never seen before, along with a gift card that read, "For Amber, can't wait for our new life together. Love, Jay." I laughed out loud, the sound echoing in the empty room. Even in the final days before his arrest, as his world was collapsing around him, James had been planning his escape with Amber. The bracelet, likely worth at least $50,000, was probably purchased with stolen funds, another tiny piece of his massive fraud. I called Agent Martinez immediately. She arranged for an agent to collect the bracelet the next morning, assuring me it would be liquidated and the proceeds added to the victim restitution fund. "You continue to surprise me, Ms. Wilson," she said. "Most people would have been tempted to keep it." "It was never mine to keep," I replied, "and I don't want anything from that life anymore." The following day, I handed over the keys to the new owners, a young family with 2 small children who raced excitedly through the empty rooms, already planning where their toys would go. Watching them, I felt an unexpected lightness. The house that had once represented success to me now seemed like an elaborate stage set for a play that had finally ended. My new apartment was a third-floor walk-up in a converted industrial building downtown, exposed brick walls, tall windows, open concept, and about one-fifth the size of the Tudor house. But when I walked in with my first boxes, sunlight was streaming through the windows, illuminating the empty space with possibilities. Melissa had left a housewarming gift on the kitchen counter, a small potted herb garden and a bottle of champagne with a note, "To new beginnings. No fake friends allowed." That night, I sat on my new balcony overlooking the city lights, sipping champagne from a paper cup. My glassware was still packed. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it hesitantly. "This is Amber. Got your number from James's old phone. Wanted you to know I testified against him today. Told them everything he asked me to hide. Guess we were both just pawns in his game. Good luck with whatever comes next." I didn't respond, but I appreciated the closure her message provided. Amber had been both victim and accomplice in James's schemes, just as I had been, in my own way. The difference was that I had chosen to break free. The next morning, I woke early, still adjusting to the sounds of my new neighborhood. I made coffee and opened my laptop to continue my job search. My resume was sparse. My career had been put on hold when I married James, and my degree in art history hadn't exactly opened doors in the current economy. But there was an email waiting for me from Margaret Wilson, the elderly victim I'd met outside the courthouse. "Dear Kelly," it read, "my husband and I have been thinking about our conversation. While we lost much of our savings to your ex-husband, we still own Wilson's Gallery downtown. Perhaps you've heard of it? We've been looking for someone to help modernize our approach and reach younger collectors. Your background in art history might be perfect. Would you consider meeting to discuss possibilities? No charity here, we need help, and you need a fresh start. Seems like a fair exchange." I felt tears spring to my eyes as I read the email twice more. It wasn't just the potential job opportunity, it was the generosity of spirit, the willingness to see me as separate from James's crimes. As I composed my grateful reply, accepting their invitation to meet, I glanced around my small but sunlit apartment. 6 months ago, I had been Mrs. James Hartley, living in a mansion built on lies. Today, I was Kelly Wilson, starting over at 36 in a downtown walk-up with uncertain prospects. And somehow, against all logic, I was happier. The stone Margaret had given me sat on my windowsill, the word courage catching the morning light. I had needed courage to turn James in, to face the collapse of my marriage and lifestyle, to testify against the man I had once loved. But I was discovering that starting over required its own kind of courage, the quiet, daily kind that gets up each morning and faces uncertainty with hope. I finished my email to Margaret, then opened a new document on my laptop. At the top, I typed, "Things I actually want." It was time to stop living someone else's version of success and define it for myself. The city was waking up below my window, buzzing with energy and possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt synchronized with that energy, no longer watching life from behind the tinted windows of James's luxury cars, but fully immersed in its messy, authentic flow. My phone rang. It was my mother, calling for our daily check-in. Since James's arrest, we had rebuilt our relationship, which had suffered during my marriage to a man she had never quite trusted. "Good morning," I answered, smiling. "You won't believe the email I just got." As I shared my news, I realized that this connection, possibility, authenticity, was the true opposite of boring. Not James's version of excitement built on lies and stolen money, but the genuine thrill of creating a life that belonged fully to me. The woman who had simply smiled and finished her wine at that devastating anniversary dinner 6 months ago would hardly recognize me now. But I recognized her. She had been the beginning of who I was becoming. And for that, strangely enough, I had James to thank. 1 year later, the bell above the gallery door chimed as I unlocked it, the familiar sound now part of my daily rhythm. I switched on the lights, illuminating the carefully curated exhibition that had opened to surprising success the previous evening. Renewal, Art After Loss featured works from artists who had transformed personal tragedy into creative expression. The exhibition had been my idea, my first major project since becoming the full-time manager of Wilson's Gallery 8 months ago. When I'd started working for Margaret and Howard, I'd been answering phones and updating their woefully outdated filing system. But they had quickly recognized my eye for emerging talent and my ability to connect with younger collectors. I was arranging fresh flowers on the reception desk when my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Have you seen it?" "Seen what?" I replied. "Check your email. It's everywhere this morning." I opened my inbox to find a news alert from the Financial Crimes newsletter I still subscribed to. The headline made my coffee go cold in my hand, Hartley associate found dead in apparent suicide. The article detailed how Richard Brennan, James's former partner and co-conspirator, had been found dead in his Miami apartment, leaving behind a detailed confession that implicated several others in the fraud scheme. Brennan had been cooperating with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence, but the pressure had apparently become too much. I sat heavily on the nearest gallery bench, memories flooding back. I had met Richard dozens of times at company functions. He had always been quieter than James, more serious, with a perpetual worried expression that now made perfect sense. I wondered if his family had been as shocked by his criminal activities as I had been by James's. The gallery phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Howard Wilson. "Kelly, have you heard the news about Brennan?" "Just reading it now." "It's terrible." "Yes, terrible indeed," Howard agreed solemnly. "But there's something else you should know." His confession apparently contained information about additional hidden assets. The receiver handling the case called this morning. They've recovered another $12 million that will be distributed to victims. My hand tightened on the phone. That's wonderful for the victims." "Yes, it is. Margaret and I will receive about $200,000. Not everything we lost, but enough to make our retirement more comfortable." He paused. "The receiver mentioned you would be receiving a notification as well. As James's ex-wife, you're entitled to a portion of the recovery." After we hung up, I sat motionless, processing this unexpected development. The money didn't interest me as much as the closure it represented, another chapter of the James saga finally ending. The gallery door chimed, startling me. It was too early for customers, but Margaret walked in, carrying 2 coffee cups and a paper bag that smelled of fresh pastries. "Thought you might need reinforcements today," she said, setting breakfast on the desk. Her kindness still caught me off guard sometimes. "Howard called me about the news." "It's sad about Richard," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. I didn't know him well, but suicide is always tragic. Margaret nodded, her wise eyes studying me. "And how do you feel about the money?" I considered her question carefully. "Honestly, I'm in a good place now. The gallery, my new apartment, my life, it all feels authentic in a way my marriage to James never did. Money from that time feels tainted somehow." "I understand," she said, surprising me. After we lost our investment with James, Howard and I went through a difficult period. Not just financially, but questioning our judgment, wondering how we could have been so blind. She unwrapped a croissant, breaking it in half to share. "But eventually, we realized that money is just a tool. It's neutral. What matters is what you do with it." Later that day, the official notification arrived by certified mail. My share of the recovered assets would be approximately $430,000, a fraction of what James and I had once controlled, but a significant sum nonetheless. That evening, I met Melissa for dinner at our favorite neighborhood bistro to discuss the unexpected windfall. "So what will you do with it?" she asked, pouring us each another glass of wine. I pulled out a notebook where I'd been jotting ideas all afternoon. "I'm thinking of dividing it into thirds. One part for a down payment on a small house, nothing extravagant, just something that's mine. One part invested for retirement. And one part." I hesitated. "One part what?" Melissa prompted. "I want to start a foundation," I said, finally voicing the idea that had been forming since I'd received the notification. "For financial education for women, especially those coming out of difficult relationships. So many of us surrender our financial independence when we marry." I did. Melissa smiled. "That sounds perfect for you. From victim to educator." "Not victim," I corrected gently. "Survivor. There's a difference." The following weekend, I received another unexpected communication, a letter from James, his first direct contact since his sentencing. The prison envelope sat on my kitchen counter all day while I cleaned my apartment, ran errands, and tried to decide whether to open it at all. Finally, as evening fell, I made myself a cup of tea, curled up by the window, and carefully opened the envelope. "Kelly," the letter began in James's familiar handwriting. "I've had a lot of time to think in here. 10 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days, to be exact. They say prison changes you, makes you reflect on your mistakes. I'm not sure that's true for everyone, but it has been for me." The letter continued with what seemed like genuine reflection on his crimes, the people he had hurt, and the marriage he had destroyed. He wrote about the therapy sessions he was required to attend, how he was beginning to understand his own pathological need for status and admiration. "I don't expect your forgiveness," he wrote toward the end. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I recognize now what I threw away. Not the money or the house or the lifestyle, but the chance to build a genuine life with someone who saw value in me beyond what I could provide materially. You deserved better than what I gave you, and I'm truly sorry. I set the letter down, surprised to find tears in my eyes. Not tears of regret or love, those emotions had long since faded, but a kind of release. James's acknowledgement didn't erase the pain he had caused, but it validated my experience in a way I hadn't realized I still needed. I didn't write back immediately. Instead, I called Dr. Bennett, the therapist who had helped me navigate the aftermath of James's arrest and my divorce. "It sounds like a genuine apology," she said after I read her portions of the letter. "The question is, what do you want to do with it?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Part of me wants to acknowledge his growth. Another part feels like any response just keeps the connection alive unnecessarily." "Both are valid," she assured me. "What matters is what brings you peace." In the end, I decided to send a brief response, not right away, but after giving myself time to reflect. I wrote simply that I appreciated his insights, wished him well on his journey of rehabilitation, and hoped he would continue the work of making amends where possible. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a release for both of us. The following month brought another milestone, the official launch of the New Leaf Foundation, my nonprofit focused on financial literacy for women. I had partnered with a local women's shelter and a community college to develop workshops and one-on-one counseling services. The launch event was held at Wilson's Gallery, with the space donated by Margaret and Howard. As I looked around at the gathered supporters, Melissa, my parents who had driven in from out of state, colleagues from the gallery, and even Agent Martinez who had handled James's case, I felt a profound sense of purpose. "I want to thank everyone for supporting this initiative," I began my short speech. 2 years ago, my life took an unexpected turn when I discovered my husband's financial fraud. Like many of his victims, I had trusted someone else entirely with my financial future, never questioning decisions that would profoundly impact my life. I paused, making eye contact with several women from the shelter who had been invited as special guests. But that crisis became an opportunity to reclaim my independence, to learn skills I should have developed years ago, and to recognize that financial autonomy is as important as emotional health in any relationship. The New Leaf Foundation aims to share those lessons, to create a community where women support each other in building both financial literacy and confidence. After the speeches and champagne toast, Agent Martinez approached me. "Quite a transformation," she said, gesturing around the gallery and at the foundation materials. "When we first met, you were shell-shocked, just beginning to process what your husband had done." I smiled. I barely recognized that version of myself now. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "in my line of work, I see the worst of human behavior, the fraud, the theft, the lies. But occasionally, I get to see something like this, someone taking that pain and transforming it into something meaningful. It's a good reminder of why we do this work." Later that night, after all the guests had left, I stayed behind to help clean up. As I moved through the quiet gallery, turning off lights and gathering empty glasses, I caught my reflection in one of the large windows. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the perfectly groomed, carefully dressed corporate wife I had been during my marriage to James. This version of me, in a simple black dress I had chosen myself, hair in a more natural style, face animated with genuine excitement rather than practiced social charm, seemed both older and younger simultaneously. More authentic, more present. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Nathan, the architect I had been dating for the past 3 months. We had met when he came to the gallery to purchase art for a client's home, and after several professional interactions, he had finally asked me to dinner. "Congratulations on the foundation launch. Wish I could have been there. Can't wait to hear all about it tomorrow. Proud of you." I smiled as I texted back, appreciating both his support and his understanding of why I had wanted to do this event on my own. Unlike my relationship with James, which had been built on appearance and status, Nathan and I were taking things slowly, getting to know each other as equals, each with our own identities and ambitions. As I locked the gallery door and stepped into the cool evening air, I thought about the strange and winding path that had led me here. 2 years ago, I had been publicly humiliated by a husband who thought I was boring in bed and not worth keeping. His cruelty had been devastating in the moment, but it had also been the catalyst for my liberation. I walked toward the corner to hail a taxi, feeling the weight of the small stone in my pocket, Margaret's gift with courage etched into it, now a talisman I carried to important events. The night of that anniversary dinner, as I had smiled calmly and finished my wine while my world collapsed around me, I could never have imagined the strength I would discover within myself. James had been wrong about so many things, but perhaps most fundamentally, He had been wrong about what makes a life exciting and fulfilling. True excitement wasn't found in stolen money or younger women or status symbols. It was found in authenticity, in purpose, in genuine connections. As I settled into the back seat of the taxi and gave the driver my address, I felt a deep contentment that had nothing to do with the perfect image I had once strived to maintain, and everything to do with the imperfect but genuine life I was creating for myself. Sometimes, the most profound revenge isn't planned at all. It's simply living well, on your own terms, long after those who hurt you have faded into the background of your story.